My name is Ruth Hawthorne, and until about 10 seconds ago, I was invisible. Not literally, of course. I had shown up to my younger sister's wedding, wearing a simple navy dress, low heels, and a smile that didn't reach my eyes. No one had greeted me. No one had introduced me. Not even Lila, my sister, looked in my direction when she walked down the aisle. But I came anyway. Out of courtesy, I told myself. Out of habit, maybe. It was during the reception that Gerald Prescott, Lila's new father-in-law, first looked at me. He had that kind of face that made you feel like you owed him something just by existing. When our eyes met, he did a slow scan, my dress, my hands, my quiet table in the back, and then he turned his head away, like I'd left a bad taste in the room. I didn't flinch. I'd grown used to that look. But then, something changed. He turned back. Not to me, but to his son, the groom. More specifically, to the ring on his finger. His brows furrowed. He leaned closer. And in that moment, I watched the color drain from his face, like someone had punched the breath out of him. "Where did he get that ring?" he asked, voice low. I sipped my water, met his eyes. I gave it to him. I said softly, "It's one of ours." And just like that, I wasn't invisible anymore. My mother used to call me her quiet one. I suppose she meant it as a compliment, but over time, it became less of an observation and more of an excuse to overlook, to forget, to set aside. My sister Leela, on the other hand, was anything but quiet. She was loud in the way that drew admiration. Sparkling eyes, perfect posture, a laugh that people leaned toward. Even as little girls, the world seemed to orbit around her, and I was just some distant moon in the corner of the night sky. Our father passed away when I was 14. That was the first time I realized how easy it was to disappear inside a house filled with grief. Lila cried louder, needed more attention, and my mother, already overwhelmed, just gave it to her. I didn't resent it then. I thought that was love, giving space to the one who asked for it. But as years passed, I noticed a pattern. At birthdays, Lila got centerpieces and cake tiers with her initials piped in gold. I got sheet cake and, "Oh, sorry, we didn't realize your favorite flavor." When I graduated summa cum laude from Wharton, they sent flowers. When Lila dropped out of design school and launched an online boutique, they threw a backyard party and popped champagne. I showed up. I clapped. I smiled. That was always my role, showing up. After Wharton, I spent 5 years in Manhattan, working 12-hour days for a global firm that prized results over noise. I was good, quiet but good. Eventually, I founded my own investment group, Hawthorne Strategic Capital, focused on sustainable development, especially long-term affordable housing ventures that actually served the people who lived in them. But I didn't post about it. I didn't tell anyone. My name was never on the headlines, only on the paperwork. And so, to my family, I remained Ruth, the single sister with some finance job, who always showed up to weddings, funerals, and holidays alone. They didn't ask about my work. They didn't ask if I was okay. Lila would introduce me at gatherings as my older sister Ruth. She's kind of mysterious, and laugh like it was charming. I didn't mind. Not really. At least, I told myself I didn't. So when her wedding invitation came in the mail, wrong spelling on my last name, wrong address, and a note that said, "It'd mean a lot if you came," I knew exactly what I was walking into. And yet, I RSVP'd yes. Not because I expected anything different. Not because I hoped to be seen. I went because I wanted to witness, to be present, to sit quietly in the back and observe the pageantry of a family who had long since learned to function without me. I arrived early. I wasn't on the printed guest list. The woman at the table had to double-check with someone else before letting me in. I didn't cause a scene, just smiled, like I always do. When I found my seat, it was at a corner table near the kitchen doors. I was alone, tucked beside a stack of extra napkins and clinking glassware. I sipped water and watched from a distance, just as I had my entire life. But that's the thing about distance. Sometimes it lets you see what no one else can. Weddings have a way of revealing where everyone stands, literally and metaphorically. There's the head table, gleaming under soft white light. Then the family tables, clustered like constellations of importance. Then the friends, the plus ones, the colleagues, the distant cousins. And then, there was me. I sat at table 27, no centerpiece, no place card with my name. Just a folded paper napkin and a bread roll that had already gone cold. I didn't complain. I never do. But I couldn't help noticing that even my name had been misspelled on the seating chart. R. Hawthorne. One letter off, but enough to make me a stranger at my own sister's wedding. Lila floated past me at least 3 times. Not once did she stop. Her dress sparkled like she'd been dipped in champagne, and her hair was pinned in a way that made her look like a walking bridal magazine cover. She was radiant, I'll admit that. And I don't think it ever crossed her mind to wonder where I was sitting, or whether I was sitting at all. Then came the introductions. The MC, some overly tanned man with a microphone and a lot of teeth, went down the line of the wedding party. Parents of the bride and groom, maid of honor, best man. Extended thanks to the many guests who made the trip. But there was no mention of me, not even a half-hearted. And of course, Lila's sister Ruth is here today. It didn't hurt, not exactly. But it sat there, in my chest, like a paperweight, small, but constant. The first real moment came when Mr. Gerald Prescott made his way down the room. He was tall, silver-haired, and carried himself like a man who measured worth in net gains and property portfolios. The kind of man who greeted you with his last name, not his first. He didn't come to greet me, of course. He was shaking hands with the city councilman at the table next to mine. But our eyes met briefly, and I saw the flicker. He looked at me like you might glance at a service entrance. Functional, unremarkable, best ignored. His eyes skimmed my dress, which was a simple, off-the-rack number I'd chosen precisely because it didn't scream for attention. Then they dropped to my shoes, my hands, the water glass I'd been nervously spinning. And then he turned away. No nod, no polite smile, not even a flicker of acknowledgement. I wasn't surprised. Men like Gerald Prescott didn't tend to notice women like me, not unless they were in their way. But what he didn't realize, what no one in that room realized, was that while he was brushing shoulders with politicians and making quiet calls to developers, I had already reviewed 3 of his largest pending land deals through my firm's regulatory advisory panel. Deals he didn't even know had passed through my hands. I didn't need to wear diamonds or speak loudly. I didn't need a microphone or a name card. Because power, real power, doesn't shout. It waits, and watches, and chooses the perfect moment to be seen. The ceremony had ended by then. Vows were exchanged. Tears were dabbed with pressed linen, and glasses were filled with champagne. The string quartet shifted to a jazz trio. Servers weaved through the crowd like dancers, balancing trays of oysters and wine. The clink of forks on porcelain filled the room like applause after a performance everyone wanted to believe was perfect. Then came the toasts. Lila's best friend gave a long speech about love being patient and adventurous, quoting Pinterest like scripture. The best man told a college story that made a few older guests shift in their seats. People laughed. They were full. They were comfortable. That's when the newlyweds stood for the ring presentation. It wasn't traditional, I suppose, but Lila had insisted on a second private vow ceremony. Just the 2 of them. A shared moment in front of the reception crowd. A chance to truly see each other, as she called it. The moment was soft. She held his hands. He smiled, and she slipped the ring onto his finger. The room clapped, and then Gerald Prescott looked down. At first, I thought it was just a casual glance, a proud father watching his son become a husband. But something in his posture changed. His back straightened. His hand froze mid-clap. He leaned forward, squinting. Then he stepped closer to the couple, eyes locked on the I recognized the moment instantly, because I'd seen that reaction before. The ring wasn't just a band of platinum, it was a signature. At Hawthorne Strategic Capital, we don't believe in flashy branding, but we do believe in identity. For our inner circle clients, partners in long-term initiatives, individuals who have been vetted and chosen, we commission a select number of personalized items. Each ring is engraved on the inner rim with a micro-insignia, a folded hawthorn leaf within a double circle. No logo, just design. Understated, but unmistakable to those who know. And Gerald knew. I saw it hit him like a thunderclap. He took another step closer, his voice low but audible. "Where did he get that ring?" Lila blinked, startled. "It's from Ruth," she said, confused. "It was her wedding gift to us. She said it was meaningful." Gerald turned. His eyes met mine again. But this time, the indifference was gone, replaced with a dawning, slow-moving realization, like someone staring across a canyon and seeing movement on the other side. "You gave him that?" he asked. I nodded once. "I did." He blinked. "How? Where did you get it?" I held his gaze. "I designed it. It's one of ours, my firm." It was quiet then. Very quiet. Not the silence of a pause between speeches. Not the hush of a crowd listening politely. It was the kind of silence that happens when someone realizes they've made a mistake. One so large, it reshapes the way they remember every moment leading up to it. I didn't smirk. I didn't tilt my head or gloat. I simply reached for my glass of water, took a slow sip, and set it down again. And for the first time all evening, Gerald Prescott had nothing to say. It didn't happen all at once. Gerald didn't rush over with an apology or suddenly introduce me to the mayor. No one made an announcement or gasped in unison. That's not how power shifts in rooms like these. It's quieter, slower, like ice beginning to crack beneath your feet. Barely audible, but irreversible. First, it was the man 2 tables over. A city planner, I think. He excused himself from his group, walked over to me, and asked, "Are you Ruth Hawthorne, of Hawthorne Strategic?" I nodded. He extended his hand with genuine warmth. "We've been working through your Westbrook redevelopment proposal. Cleanest submission we've ever seen. If there's room at your table, I'd love to talk more." That caught the attention of the couple behind him, both in real estate development. The woman leaned in. "Wait, the Hawthorne, the capital firm, the one behind the Green Line housing project?" Word spreads quickly when it needs to. Within minutes, my quiet corner table had become something else entirely. People stopped by. Names I'd only seen on proposal sheets and policy boards now spoke mine with familiarity. A few offered cards, others just said thank you. And somewhere in that growing buzz, I caught sight of Gerald, still standing stiffly, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass he hadn't sipped in minutes. His eyes followed each person who approached me, like he was trying to solve a puzzle with pieces he didn't even know were missing. Lila finally came over, her expression tight, like someone walking into a room she didn't realize was on fire. "Ruth," she said cautiously, "I had no idea you were involved in all this." I smiled, not smugly, just softly. "I know. Why didn't you ever say anything?" I met her gaze. "You never asked." Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. There were so many things she could have said in that moment. Defensive, wounded, even curious. But she didn't say any of them. Instead, she gave a small nod and stepped back. Across the room, Gerald finally approached, slowly, measured. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice low. "I made an assumption." I looked at him evenly. "You made several." He exhaled, maybe hoping I'd let him off the hook. I didn't. "I have a board opening," he offered, "on one of our sustainability branches, if you're interested, of course." "I'm not," I said calmly. "Your firm's ethics policies don't meet our baseline standards." The air between us turned cooler, but not hostile, just real. He nodded once, tightly, then turned and walked away. And for the first time that day, I felt still, not vindicated, not victorious, just rooted in myself, seen. Not because I demanded it, but because truth has a gravity of its own. And eventually, everything starts to tilt toward it. I stayed for the cake cutting, but not much longer after that. I slipped out quietly before the dance floor filled, before the DJ switched to 80s throwbacks and the heels came off. I'd already left my gift with the wedding coordinator, a portfolio folder, neatly wrapped in linen paper, addressed to Leela and Daniel. Inside was the transfer documentation for a modest but promising investment. A 5% silent partnership stake in a housing development on the edge of the city. Nothing flashy, but if managed right, it would generate steady returns over the years. The property was already in construction. It had Ruth Hawthorne's seal of due diligence, and it now belonged to them. I didn't include a note, just the papers, no performance, no bows. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt the tightness in my chest loosen. Not because I had proven anything, not because Gerald Prescott had seen the ring, or shaken my hand, or offered me a seat I declined, but because, for once, I hadn't tried to make myself smaller to fit their story. I had let them sit in their assumptions, and I had simply waited, quietly, until the room corrected itself. Outside, the valet recognized me from earlier and rushed to bring my car around. He was young, probably working a summer job, but polite. Called me ma'am, opened the door, smiled without judgment. As I drove away, I didn't replay the moment Gerald froze, or the way Lila looked at me, like she was trying to remember who I was. I didn't need to. The point wasn't to be remembered. It was to remember myself. I used to think silence made me invisible, but that night, I realized something else. Silence, when chosen, becomes presence. It becomes power. The kind that doesn't ask for attention. The kind that waits to be earned. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel like the quiet one. I felt like the only one who had truly been listening all along. I used to think vindication would feel like thunder, that it would come in some grand, cinematic moment where the spotlight turned my way, and everyone finally understood what they'd missed. That people like Gerald Prescott would apologize out loud, that my mother might cry and say she was wrong, that Lila would run up to me and say she never meant to overlook me. But real life doesn't work like that. What happened instead was quiet, soft, almost forgettable, if you weren't paying attention. No one gasped. No one made a toast in my name. No one fell to their knees in apology. There was no applause, no dramatic reveal. Just a subtle shift. A few more eyes turning toward me. A few voices softening when they said my name. A few hands shaking mine with slightly more intention. That was enough. Because the truth is, I hadn't come to be seen. Not really. I'd come out of habit, out of respect, out of some small, flickering belief that being present, even when uninvited in spirit, still mattered. And somewhere along the way, I realized that being underestimated had given me a strange kind of freedom. The freedom to build without performance, to lead without noise, to own my power without explanation. For years, I'd let their version of me echo in the background. Quiet Ruth, private Ruth, mysterious, maybe even a little sad. I let them paint me in muted colors, and I didn't correct them, because I didn't need to. I thought that made me noble. I thought silence was sacrifice. But now I see it differently. Silence isn't always selfless. Sometimes silence is strategy. Sometimes silence is strength. The kind of strength that doesn't seek permission, that doesn't ask to be included, because it's already whole, already steady, already enough. What Gerald saw in that ring wasn't just a piece of metal. He saw structure, intent, a system bigger than himself, one he didn't control, didn't name, and didn't expect to answer to a woman sitting near the kitchen doors. And that's what shook him. Not my words, my existence. That I could sit quietly, sip water, and still hold influence that moved underneath the surface of his empire. That I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard. That power, real power, doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits, like I did, for the moment when it is simply undeniable. As for Lila, I think she finally saw me. Not just the big sister title, not the invitation list formality, but me. The one who had always shown up, quietly, unnoticed, but always there. And I think she'll remember that, even if she never says it out loud. I didn't leave that wedding with fanfare. I didn't want it. What I left with was more subtle, but more lasting. I left knowing that I don't have to make myself small to be allowed in the room, that I never did. I have my own room, my own name, my own legacy. And if people don't know it yet, that's okay. Because I do. And that, finally, is enough.